I'm Shahar Azani, and in the news, the very important issue of the upcoming 2020 elections. No, not those elections. I'm talking about the other ones relating to the future of Israel and the Jewish people. No, not those elections. Even though these are very important ones for Israel, at least from what we've seen in dress rehearsals number 1 and 2 in April and September of 2019, with the next and hopefully the last one scheduled for March 2nd, 2020. No, today I'd like to speak to you about the upcoming elections for the World Zionist Congress, also known as the Parliament of the Jewish People, also known as that ad which keeps on popping on your social media feed that you don't click on because you're not sure what that is, and in any case, you've had enough of hearing about elections this year. Well, brace yourselves, because you cannot be more wrong. And like those important letters you get in the mail and you leave unopened for a few months, only to discover you should have done so much earlier because now you can no longer cash in that lottery check, you should pay close attention to this upcoming segment. These upcoming elections are for the U.S. representatives to the 38th World Zionist Congress. These elections are set to begin next week, January 21st, and last for 7 weeks until March 11th. But first, what is the World Zionist Congress? The first Zionist Congress was convened by Theodor Herzl in 1897 in Basel, Switzerland, with the participation of some 200 delegates representing 17 countries. Together, the delegates to the first Zionist Congress formed the World Zionist Organization. They called for Zionism to establish a home for the Jewish people, remember 1897, in what was then the Ottoman-ruled territory of Palestine. It was immediately following this Congress that Herzl wrote in his diary what became his most memorable phrase. In Basel, he said, "I founded the Jewish state. If I were to say this out loud today, I would be met with universal laughter. But in 5 years perhaps, certainly in 50, the whole world will know it." And, as we can see 120 years later, he was not kidding. The Jewish state of Israel reappeared on the world stage stronger and better than ever before. Which brings us to the why. Why are these elections so important, and why should we care? The World Zionist Congress is the top governing body of the World Zionist Organization. It convenes once every 5 years in Jerusalem and brings together over 2,000 Zionist activists from around the world. This gathering represents the entire political and religious spectrum of the Zionist movement worldwide. Together, these delegates come together with the bodies they form at that Congress. They craft the vision, they determine the leadership, and they influence the policies of Israel's national institutions, which are the World Zionist Organization, the Jewish Agency for Israel, Keren Kayemet LeIsrael, and Keren HaYesod, which operates outside of the US. The idea is to set in motion initiatives to strengthen and fashion Israel as the Jewish state, as well as support Jewish communities in the diaspora, bring Jews to Israel, develop and settle the land, and raise funds for all of the above. Most importantly, the World Zionist Congress decides on the allocation of over $1 billion in funding in support of Israel and world Jewry. Let me repeat it, $1 billion US dollars. That's a lot of influence right there. And let me say one more thing about being Jewish today. If we learned anything from history, it is that even if one would like to forget about being Jewish, the world around us seems adamant to remind us who we are. Therefore, embrace your identity. Celebrate it. These elections present a unique opportunity to make our voices heard, to shape Israel, to care about our fellow Jews, not only here in the US, but all around the world. It's an opportunity to come together, not just because of all of the bad things, but mostly because of the good ones. to help each other, to be there for those in need, and to support the State of Israel, which in spite of all of the criticism around, is still the one and only Jewish state. A tiny sliver of land, our cradle of birth as a people, rising from the ashes to become of one amazing beacon of hope. Just pause for a moment and think, how fortunate are we that Israel is here, now, re-emerging in our time. Our ancestors yearned to come back to Jerusalem, and we, of all people, get to be a part of this incredible miracle called Israel, never to be taken for granted. Okay, so now we want to get back to business. There are 3 major blocks of elected delegates to the Zionist Congress. About a third is US-based. And this is who you are going to be voting for. To get into the details, I am pleased to have with me Herbert Block, the Executive Director of the American Zionist Movement, the AZM. Thank you very much for joining me, Herb.
Thank you for having me, Shahar, and a great introduction.
Thank you. A superbly important topic, and I'm very happy to discuss it with you today. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about what the AZM is, and what is your role in all of this?
Thank you. The American Zionist Movement is a body that's been around under various names, been known as the AZM for the last quarter century, been around as the umbrella Zionist Federation in America, which really began at the time of the Shoah to bring the Zionist groups in America together to push for the creation of the State of Israel, and it continues to be the unifying body now of 33 national Zionist organizations of all aspects of the American Jewish community, ideological, religious, cultural, nationwide groups that unify together on basic principles of Zionism. And the AZM represents the American Zionist movement in the World Zionist Organization, and we facilitate the election of the U.S. representatives, the one that you talked about in your introduction.
Maybe if you can share with us a little bit about the importance of these elections. I try to stress it myself, but we want to hear from what you have to say. Why should these elections matter to the viewers, to us, to the American Jewish community?
So as you mentioned, Shahar, in the great opening segment, the importance of the World Zionist Congress in helping set the priorities and leadership for the what are known as the national institutions of Israel, which collectively have programs in Israel and throughout the Jewish diaspora around the world. The budgets of those organizations are $1 billion a year. So there's a lot of funding being spent to help develop Israel, social services, immigration, aliyah, Jewish education in Israel and throughout the globe. The Zionist Congress determines the direction that the movement will take, and is a direct connection, and as you said, the parliament of the Jewish people, bringing together the grassroots, Amcha, from both within Israel and from dozens of countries around the globe. The election for the Zionist Congress in America serves to elect the American representatives to go to the Zionist Congress, but it's also an important statement by American Jewry, because not only are you electing groups of delegates, slates of delegates as they're called, but you're also declaring your personal commitment to Zionism. It's a chance to stand up as a Zionist, which is important for many because there's increased anti-Zionism in America. And the election is also a reflection on the makeup of the American Jewish populace. It's a snapshot, a barometer of the community every 4 or 5 years, and how American Jews view important issues, and it's a statement about the activism of the American Jewish community.
You know, I'm happy to hear what you say, because At the end of the day, you're talking about Zionism and, of course, naturally the anti-Zionism and the movement we've seen on campuses and beyond. And to quote from Barry Weiss's recent book, what starts as anti-Zionism unfortunately ends up being anti-Semitism, and we all know which way that is leading us. So I wanna expand on that point just a little bit and ask you, you mentioned the programs that the World Zionist Congress and the organizations are actually executing in the US, Israel, and around the world. Can you share with us some of these programs? What exactly is it that the organization, that the Congress does as far as its programming on education or otherwise within Israel and within diaspora Jewish communities all over?
So many people know of the work of the Jewish Agency, the Sochnut, the WZO, the Histadrut Zionit, both in a very general way. Jewish education programs, funding of shlichim for camps, for schools, informal education, trips to Israel, Zionist education, training young leaders of Jewish communities in connecting them to Israel and Zionism. The Karen Kayemet L'Israel, which is one of the national institutions, the Jewish National Fund, is well known for its historic and current role in settling the land and developing the greenery of Israel. The Karen Hayesod raises money from around the Jewish world to support these activities. So the Zionist Congress is like, I use the analogy of a political convention, like the Republican National Convention, the Democratic National Convention, in that sense that it brings together all the leadership of the Zionist movement from around the world every couple of years to recharge their batteries, to set a vision and a platform for the movement, to make pass resolutions setting the priorities for the movement, to elect a leadership that will determine what these bodies are doing. So while the Congress doesn't go through a budget line by line, it's picking the leaders who will make those decisions. It's setting the overall priority and direction for the Zionist movement, and the Zionist movement remains the primary connection between between Jews around the world in the diaspora and those of our brethren who are in the land of Israel.
So this is also a very important point to mention. The fact that in this, the World Zionist Congress is, like you're saying, is a point of meeting between the Israeli leadership, the Jewish Israeli leadership within Israel, and of course from around the world, and the most significant Jewish community in the diaspora, which is the American Jewish community. Hence what you mentioned about showing the face of that community and which are the leading voices there. Can you elaborate a little bit about that meeting of interest, the way it takes place at the World Zionist Congress between the American Jewish community and the Israeli leadership? Because sometimes it feels like there is an ocean apart.
So the Zionist Congress, and I have not been to one myself, but from every account that I've heard from people, it's an inspiring body. I've talked to a lot of people who have been there and come away inspired by meeting colleagues from Israel, meeting colleagues from around the world. I've talked to young people who are delegates, and by the way, the rules of the WZO require that a quarter of the delegates be young people under age 35. So it's a chance for the future leadership of the Zionist movement and the Jewish communities from around the world, Americans and dozens of other countries and from Israel, to get together, to meet, to share ideas, to get to know each other. And the work of the Zionist Congress is also not a one-time meeting. Out of the Zionist Congress are formed many bodies and committees that meet throughout the intervening 4 or 5 years to do the day-to-day work of those institutions and to oversee their budgets and programs. So the Congress itself picks and chooses sub-bodies, subcommittees that keep the work going and monitor the work and develop the work and make sure that new priorities and new challenges that will inevitably arise in between Congresses are dealt with. But the overall body that sets the direction is the Zionist Congress. And this is the 38th World Zionist Congress that will meet in Jerusalem in October 2020. And by being there and participating in the vote, it's a direct personal connection that one can make between the first Zionist Congress that Herzl convened in Basel and the movement which continues today, more than 120 years later.
What an amazing thought, Herb. What an amazing thought to think that those who are going to be elected for the World Zionist Congress are actually stepping in those incredible footsteps, the same footsteps that have brought forth the state of Israel as we see it today. That's quite incredible. I also want to completely echo your statement about the actual face-to-face meetings. As we know, within the non-Jewish world in Israel, those trips to Israel, those face-to-face meetings make a world of a difference. And it's very significant even within our very complicated, sometimes seem too divided, but always united Jewish world. Let me get into the details a little bit. So who's running this time, and where can we find information about the different slates?
So there are 14 different slates, as we call them, which are really groups or parties, in a sense, that are running. They are listed all on the website where one can vote as well, and you can see information on each slate's platform statement and the list of their candidates. The website is zionistelection.org. Very simple, zionistelection.org. And all the information is there about the 14 different groups. Many of those groups also are prominently campaigning in the American Jewish community and have their own websites and their own social media posts about their platforms and why one should vote for them. But all the information is on our website, zionistelection.org, which is run by the American Zionist Movement to facilitate this election. You can see the information, you can register, and you can vote there.
Which leads me to the inevitable question of, we have the 14 slates, as you call them. So how can you run in those elections? Assuming Joe Schmo from Idaho wakes up tomorrow morning, an American Jew, could he present his candidacy? Like, what are the criteria for running in the election?
So last spring, we started the registration of the slates. Those groups that won delegates in the last election in 2015 are deemed to be qualified to run again. And there was a call for new slates that are running. A number were interested. They have to present their platform and their statement of why they want to run, show their connection to the Zionist movement, their list of candidates, and then get 500 signatures to be a new slate. So we have 14 slates running now, which is more than ever. And
is there a limitation on the number of slates that can run in the elections?
There is no limitation. Last time we had 11. I think the time before that, in 2006, there were 12. But there's a record number of slates. Altogether, those slates have 1,800 candidates that are running. The slates select their candidates based on people who are involved in their organizations and their own movements, and they span a very broad range of the Jewish community, right to left, center, all aspects of the religious spectrum as well. And the slates select their candidates. So at this point, one cannot start a new slate or be a candidate, but hopefully there'll be more people inspired now who say, oh, wow, I wish I could have run, and next time we'll have even more participation.
So for amen and amen. And second of all, so the idea is they don't vote for a person, they vote for a party. They vote for a list.
Correct. And you vote for a list, and and then it's a proportional representation. It's like a parliamentary system, which is not what we're used to here in most elections in America, but it's like used in Israel and many countries around the world. So if slate X gets 17% of the vote, they will get 17% of the delegates. The slates also send alternates who participate in all the deliberations and the meetings, etc.
When you're saying a certain percentage of the delegates, you mean the amount allocated to the American Zionist movement, the 100 and roughly 30%?
Right. There's 152 elected delegates. There's many others who come to the Zionist Congress, as you mentioned, who participate as observers, as alternates, as guests, etc. The elected delegates are about 500 from around the world. America has 152, which is roughly a third of the elected delegates, and the slates will get a proportional share based on their proportion of the vote, and then the top people from that slate who are on the list will go and attend in Jerusalem.
The actual meeting. So out of 1,800, roughly 1,800 candidates on the different lists, 152 will make their way to be the official delegates to Jerusalem for the 30th World Zionist Congress. That's correct?
Correct. And there could be another up to every delegate can have 2 alternates who come. That's a way of encouraging more people to be involved and participate. And so there could be, 450 Americans attending.
Very nice. So now I'm excited. I understand what this is about. Maybe I'm considering running for the next round, but at the moment, I want to take part in this. And I'm asking you, Herb, we mentioned maybe you can give us the actual details of when exactly is voting taking place, how is it done, maybe take us through the process. Is there a ballot, or how does that even work?
So, again, the voting starts at the website of ZionistElection.org. The information is also on the AZM website, which will direct you there, which is very simple, azm.org. The voting starts January 21st on Tuesday and runs until the day after Purim on March 11th. Of 2020 this year. So it's 7 weeks of voting, and you go to the website, you'll see all the information there about the candidates and the slates. You register online. I'll mention that there is an option for people to get a paper ballot if someone's not comfortable or not able to vote on a computer. But when I say register online, you can vote from your smartphone, from your computer, your laptop, mobile device. The election is run on AZM's behalf by a private third-party company that runs private elections and uses the latest in secure blockchain technology.
But
you go to the website.
Let me stop you for a minute there. I have to ask you, it's kind of like burning inside of me, and I have to put it out there. Voting is usually, isn't it like a day, mostly 2? Why are you taking 7 weeks to do that?
Well, it's no connection to Shavuot, which is 7 weeks. But in that sense, we want to give people a long opportunity to participate. So we want as many American Jews to vote and to know about the election. This election is not as well known as, American elections, which are, the second Tuesday after the first Monday of November, or Super Tuesday in the primaries in a presidential election coming up.
But now it will be. But now that you're on JBS, it will be.
We're hoping it's going to be known, but to give people the maximum opportunity to learn about the opportunity and to have a chance to vote, we have an extended voting period. As you can also see in many public elections now, the trend is to even begin early voting. So even in American elections, you can vote in the month of October before the election day in November. So in that spirit, we're giving people 7 weeks to vote. As I mentioned, you go to the website, ZionistElection.org, and you then register. There is a small fee of $7.50 per voter, or $5 discounted fee for those 25 and under, to encourage young Zionists to participate. That registration fee covers the cost of running the election. We all pay taxes and support our board of elections in our city or county, which runs the election. So the fee covers the cost of voting, and also serves as a way of verifying voters to make sure that it's an actual person voting. It's one person can vote one time.
So let me just hold you there. I want to ask you something that is extremely relevant here. Who is eligible to vote?
So any American Jew who is over the age of 18 and has a permanent residence in the United States. You don't have to be an American citizen, but you have to have a permanent residence in the United States, can vote. They also have to check a box that they agree to the Jerusalem program, in Hebrew, the Tochnit Yerushalayim. That is the platform of the Zionist movement. It's what was known as the Basel platform of Herzl in 1897, which was updated after the State of Israel was formed, and that also you did not vote you did not vote or will not be voting in the Knesset election, because this is an election for American representatives, and we don't want double dipping, as it were. So the bottom line is you're 18, a permanent resident of the United States, and agree to the Jerusalem program, and then you can vote in the election.
And do you make sure, you mentioned something about the fee and a company, do you monitor to make sure that it's all, as we say in our tribe, kosher?
Yes. So we obviously, we believe, when American Jews register to vote, the statements that I indicated before, it's an honor system. We're not checking anyone's Jewish status. We're trusting people's birth date. We believe the Jewish people are an honest nation, honest people, and we are taking your word when you affirm that statement. The payment methods to make sure that people vote only once and there's no hacking and things like that serve to confirm that it's a real person making a payment of the registration fee, which again covers the cost of the election. We have a top-notch company out of Cleveland called Votem, which is experienced in running public and private elections and uses the latest in secure technology to secure people's data and information, and they count the ballots. And they have all the information that comes in on the voters. So after you pay your registration fee, you'll get a confirmation, you'll get a voting code, you can stay online on the website, and then you'll see a ballot, and you pick one of the slates to vote for, you submit your ballot, and you're done. The whole thing should take you a minute or two to accomplish online. Again, there's a paper form that people can download and mail that in with their payment as well if they prefer that.
That's incredible, Herb. I have to say that I know now much more about the process after having spoken with you, the importance of the World Zionist Congress, walking in the footsteps of Theodor Herzl, and actually making a difference, not only in its session itself in Jerusalem, but also working with the different bodies and subcommittees of the Congress in executing real change and exerting real influence on the direction Israel and the Jewish people are headed. I want to thank you, Herb, for joining us today on JBS. We've learned a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and I just encourage everyone between January 21 and March 11th, go vote at ZionistElection.org.
Thank you very much. So if any of this convinced you to run, by all means do so next time. If you care, you want to influence the direction of the Jewish people, all you have to do is rally people behind you, get your 500 signatures, and make it happen. But in the meantime, go out there and vote. Make a difference. Visit azm.org/elections and be counted. This is your chance. So there you have it. To quote Mark Twain, or at least one of his many online versions, if voting make any difference, they wouldn't let us do it. But in this case, it does make a difference, and they do let us do it. So remember, if you will it, it is no dream. I wish to thank our director, Sloan Copeland, JBS's managing director, Dara Golub, our technical manager, Michael Paley, transmission manager, John McDavid, and to the producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. For JBS, I'm Shahar Azani. Until next time, see you soon and lehitraot.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please, indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.